Hi everyone, I'm Hassan, the CEO of Hotglue, and today I'm going to talk about the future of data integration, specifically how the rise of the cloud has affected moving data around between different platforms. So just a high-level overview of what I'll go over. I want to discuss kind of data integration and the new trends in the space, and that's in the analytics and business intelligence space where you do reporting on internal company data and figuring out different trends and making business decisions based off of that. And then also in the SaaS space. So how do you actually, from a development standpoint, how do engineers pull data out of these different platforms and consolidate it so that users get a more fully featured experience? Then I'll do a brief demo of Hotglue and how it helps achieve SaaS integrations, and then we'll do a Q&A. So what is data integration? Enterprise tools need access to customer data. So we have some logos on the screen here, but the idea is that there's a bunch of SaaS platforms out there that help businesses manage different parts of their company, whether it's like Quickbooks or Xero that help you manage your invoicing and your accounting, to Salesforce and HubSpot that help you manage leads and sales, or even Stripe that helps you manage billing. And since your data as a company is spread over so many different platforms, it becomes troublesome to actually get a clear idea of what's going on in the company because the data is so spread out. And the more platforms that enterprise tools can support, the more customers they can get. So if you're building a new SaaS platform and you're able to support more data sources, you're able to get a more clear picture of how the company's doing, and you can actually help the company more. And so in the analytics space, there's a bunch of SaaS platforms that help businesses manage everything from sales to analytics. And as a company analyst that's doing business intelligence work, you really have to consolidate this data before you can even build a report and get an idea of how a company's doing. And there's a bunch of tools that help with that now. And so if you look at Stitch or Fivetran, these are tools that have existed for many years now, and they help analysts pull data from platforms like Salesforce or HubSpot or any of these others into something like BigQuery or Snowflake, and you can take that and put it into a reporting platform and really generate real insights on a reporting platform like Humo.io. More recently, there's a big push in the analytics space to create open source tools that do the same thing as Fivetran and Stitch. So there's a platform called Meltano, and they're building an open source platform that helps you consolidate data through a self-hosted mechanism. So you actually don't have to pay for some cloud service to create and pull this data into one standardized place. This is kind of a step in the reverse direction from what Talend started with. So Talend is one of the early people in the analytics space that made it easy to consolidate data between platforms. And they were totally self-hosted, kind of Windows native applications. But there's a big push now that cloud came out to build platforms that do this on the cloud through a web application. So analysts can do this same as developers without having to put in a lot of engineering work. You can actually build some really sophisticated reports that give a very good idea of how a company's doing. In the SaaS space, things are a little bit different. So SaaS platforms need access to customer data to work. And so typically developers would have to build all of this from scratch, whether it's development team using different APIs to pull in data. So Stripe's API or HubSpot's API, they're known to be pretty well documented and well serviced. The problem is that a lot of these enterprise tools, they're a little bit older. They don't have great API support. So dealing with something like QuickBooks or Intact is a little bit harder to deal with than something like Stripe, which is more recently developed and has more API documentation. And for an engineering team, it's really important to be able to support your users well and quickly. To that end, there's an emergence of these new integration platforms, and they're kind of called iPaaS solutions. And their goal is to enable any engineer to build integrations very quickly. So you connect to the QuickBooks API, and you're able to pull out all the invoices for a company, or the HubSpot API and pull out all the leads. This process is very largely unstandardized right now. So since every API is different and every company is free to build their APIs how they please, there isn't really a great standard on how to pull data between platforms, especially in the SaaS world. Just a little bit interesting because the analytics space has so many different tools, Stitch, Fivetran, Meltano, that are able to do this standardized process. Seems a little bit weird that developers don't have the same resources available to them, and that's kind of what our company Hotglue is all about. And so, kind of a few trends here that I'm trying to touch on is there's more data platforms than ever, and that means that data is more spread out, especially for companies. So all the SaaS platforms we mentioned, but there's really more and more SaaS platforms every day, and that's very, very new development. The other part of this is the rise of cloud computing and how popular it's become. Because of that, people are less antsy about making things on-premise and processing all their data internally, but rather they're okay with an external company pulling their data and moving it around for them. And then the third trend is also relatively new, is that there's a lot of big data processing happening around this space. So before, if you wanted to move data around, kind of the standard was you use SQL, and then with the rise of Fivetran, dbt, and all these new tools came out that made it really easy to orchestrate moving data around and transforming it once it got into one of these data warehouses like Snowflake or BigQuery. And so we have a quote from Talent here, but basically it says that there's a big trend for moving away from on-premise big data applications to doing it in the cloud, and kind of responding to that growth of cloud demand and the desire for developers and users to be able to do this without dealing with spinning up servers on their own side has been a very big push. So let's do a quick demo of what an integration actually looks like, and we'll actually use Cumul.io for this. And so if you look at this, what we're looking at is an MRR dashboard that will be populated by Cumul.io. But obviously, it's hard to build an MRR dashboard if there's no data. And so what Hotglue will help do here is a user, in this case a company, they could go ahead and connect all the invoices that have been processed through their billing or their accounting system. So in this case, we'll connect like a Quickbooks account. And so you go in and press invoices here, connect your Quickbooks account, and it asks you to log in. So all of this is happening through Hotglue, but it's using QuickBooks APIs and OAuth to accomplish this. So you're able to connect your QuickBooks account. And once that goes through, Hotglue connects the data, and the data's been linked. And Hotglue will go through and sync the data now. Now, interestingly, for a developer, it's actually pretty difficult to go and grab all this data robustly and push it through to a standardized place that reports can be generated, such as Cumul.io. But Hotglue will do this and push it directly to a SQL database. And the great thing is, once that data comes through, the dashboard is automatically populated. And for a user, this is really powerful. So they've gone from not having great visibility into how things are trending, like churn or their MRR, and now they can see it just because you were able to get direct access to the data. And let's kind of go into more detail about how that was actually set up. So if we jump over to Hotglue here, this is showing an example environment with Hotglue configured. And this is the admin side. So if you were a developer, you would be able to go in here and say, I'd love to support pulling invoices from QuickBooks and Xero, and I'd love to also support pulling sales data from HubSpot and Salesforce. And that's what we see on the right side of my screen here. And so if I was to click any of one of these, a pop-up would come up asking me to connect my Salesforce account. And we can actually go ahead and create this same functionality that you saw inside of the demo I just showed you inside of this React app. And so if I go ahead and pull up my environment. So this is the sample code of a generic React app. And we have some instructions here. So one, we're going to add the Hotglue widget into this React app. And this specifies that we're going to connect to a demo environment I've created for this. And then we're also going to install a new package. Since this is a React app, we can use Hotglue's package called Hotglue Elements. So I'm going to install that. And then we can also add some code here to actually render this new integrations page. So this is coming directly from Hotglue. And so this is going to render a connections page with all those different available sources. And it's going to specify a user ID here. Now, typically, if you were building a web app, you'd already have your user ID available to you. But since this is just a demo, I'm going to use test user ID. I'm going to save that. And let's switch back to the React app, which is refreshing. So now we can see that it's loaded, and we have all of those sources available, just as we had configured here. And so again, this is for a user. You would just press Salesforce. You would ask them to log in, and they could actually connect their Salesforce account just like that. So let's actually look at how that's actually been set up. And so if we go over to tenants, flows, we can see that there's two sections here, and we call these flows. So these are different types of data that you can connect from a certain system. So for invoices, we'll connect accounting systems like Quickbooks and Xero, and you can actually specify what data you'd like to pull out of each of these. So in Quickbooks, we're pulling invoices, and these are all the different fields that Quickbooks allows you to pull from their Quickbooks API. On the flip side, Xero, we're also pulling invoices, and the data that Xero allows you to pull is similar, but a little bit different. And Hotglue actually handles making both of these types of data look similar and something that our app can understand. For example, the Cumul.io demo that we had shown you earlier. And we're able to push that to a number of different places. So example, you could push it out to S3 or similar Azure Blob Storage or Google Cloud Storage, or even a database like SQL or a warehouse like Snowflake. Now let's go ahead and actually pretend that we're a user and connect a Salesforce account here. So I'll grab this verification code. And Hotglue connects the data. And we can see that my Salesforce account is now connected, and that I can no longer connect my HubSpot account. And so sales data can flow through from my Salesforce account into this pretend application. And all I really did was go in here and say what I wanted to connect. So in this case, from HubSpot, we're pulling contacts, and same thing from Salesforce. And these fields are coming through just like that. That's really all there is to Hotglue. And as you can see, it makes it very easy to consolidate data from these different platforms into your application and make it easy for a customer to get an experience like this, where they can visualize their data through your application or derive some other insights without having to use one of those tools like Fivetran or Meltano to get the data out and into some type of data warehouse.